So it's been a couple weeks and I took a heck of a week to take off. We have Sam Altman getting exposed to Hedera, a Robinhood listing, a mention of Hedera in a White House crypto report, the SEC making massive moves, and much more. Welcome back. I'm Brandon, the HBAR Bull, here once again to bring you the latest in the Hedera ecosystem. But as always, none of this is financial advice. Use it for entertainment or educational purposes only. Before we get into the latest Hedera news, I want to explain why myself and so many others are excited about the rest of the summer and going into the fall for the crypto market. It stems from what we've experienced in the past for crypto bull markets in the early part of the summer. This chart shows how top tokens performed in June through July in the last bull market in 2021. Crypto struggled, particularly alts, during this time, and it's not surprising. Most markets experience these summer doldrums where there's choppy action with little direction as people are on vacation and just focused on other things in their life. That said, here's the performance of those same tokens in August to November in 2021. And H2 into the new year is when we saw crazy gains in 2017 and even in 2013 as well. But if we look at the summer doldrums this year, we're actually seeing a rally with known catalysts coming going into the fall, like US altcoin ETFs. HBAR's ETF will likely come between September and November 11th, which is the final deadline. What's more, this time around, HBAR is leading the pack as Solana was in the last run, and Solana outperformed the rest of the field last time by about 8 to 10x. I'm not saying this is going to repeat for HBAR this time around, but hopefully it's going to rhyme. So I'm certainly excited about the months to come, but it's not just about the seasonality. There are so many catalysts that are coming out that are putting the wind in the sails of the HBAR market. There's too many to count, to be honest, and we're going to get into some of the latest now. First, this week, Hedera was included in the White House Crypto Working Group report entitled Strengthening America's Leadership in Digital Financial Technology. In the opening of the report, it says, the working group, as the author of this report, endorses the notion that digital assets and blockchain technologies can revolutionize not just America's financial system, but systems of ownership and governance economy-wide. The working group encourages the federal government to operationalize President Trump's promise to make America the crypto capital of the world and adopt a pro-innovation mindset towards digital assets and blockchain technologies. Hedera's website was used to create the report's section outlining the structure of a DeFi tech stack, and attribution was given in a footnote. This shows a respect from the working group for the professionalism that Hedera exudes in everything it does. Another thing I believe the early majority of crypto investors that will be entering will appreciate over the next several months. Along the same lines, and probably even more impactful, was a speech that was just given by the new SEC chairman, Paul Atkins, unveiling the agency-wide Project Crypto, which outlines how they're embracing crypto rails for our financial markets and how they want to meet that goal of making America the crypto capital of the world. Frankly, you would have thought the speech was written by the crypto industry itself. What struck me after reading it was this speech should make utility layer ones like Hedera really excited. What they're trying to do has far less impact on Bitcoin than the platforms on which the financial rails can be built, and there's really no better for that than Hedera. To explain, Bitcoin has captured the crypto store of value spot, and in today's debt, monetary, and fiscal environment, it's beyond necessary. While it's undeniable that Bitcoin is a store of value innovation, that space really doesn't demand the cutting edge, which is good because Bitcoin unarguably isn't. The store of value space has been filled by bonds, fiat currency, real estate, and gold. These are assets that haven't changed much or at all in hundreds or thousands of years. What Chairman Atkins is talking about, revamping the financial system, requires the best technology. Hedera is the state of the art and the best suited for this revolution. Things really couldn't be better for Hedera and the crypto industry considering what came out in this speech, but it's far from the only good thing that's going on in the Hedera ecosystem. There were some really interesting developments with OpenAI last week. A.R. Rahman is an Indian superstar that's been working with Hedera for a really long time and is now working with Sam Altman, the CEO of OpenAI and ChatGPT, on a mysterious project called Secret Mountain. Now, we don't have the details on this project, but getting Sam to look intently at a presentation starting with Hedera is invaluable considering the amazing things that Hedera is doing in AI, from embedding Hedera tech into Intel and NVIDIA chips to setting provenance standards and laying the foundations for HBAR to become the native AI currency. The other big piece of news that came out last week is HBAR's listing on Robinhood, and I can't say how important this is. Robinhood is not just a crypto exchange and exposes people to HBAR that aren't crypto native, and it will be a perfect complement to HBAR's ETFs coming in a few months. Now for this next update, I have to say that all the credit goes to Ryan Solomon from Genfinity. It was really exciting to see what he dug up. He found a paper put out by the Global Blockchain Business Council, of which, of course, Hedera is a part. The paper aims to provide a foundational step towards a global risk-based assessment and proposed mitigation path, enabling the safe, secure adoption of blockchains, in particular public blockchains, for regulated financial institutions. Said another way, it's a guide for regulated financial institutions to use networks like Hedera. As expected, there were several Web3 players that were contributors, but there were a couple TradFi institutions that stood out as well. The first was the DTCC, the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation. The Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation is one of the most critical financial institutions in the global economy, responsible for clearing, settling, and maintaining records for the vast majority of the U.S. securities transactions. It processes over 2 quadrillion in securities annually and serves as the backbone for financial market infrastructure. In short, virtually every stock trade in the U.S. goes through the DTCC. It's a massive behind-the-scenes powerhouse of Wall Street. It was actually explained in Atkins' speech, which we can watch real quick. This is fitting considering how well his speech and this paper are laying the groundwork for our markets to move onto crypto rails.
Markets channel human ingenuity towards society's most intractable problems by rewarding those who develop the most innovative solutions that others value enough to buy. They are the mechanism by which Adam Smith's invisible hand elevates those who act in the common good, even when pursuing their own. The SEC's role is to safeguard markets that allow the spark of human creativity and skill to benefit society. Over the arc of its history, the agency has both enabled innovation and, regrettably at times, stifled it. Fortunately, progress has a way of prevailing. And when our regulatory posture is calibrated to meet innovation with thoughtfulness rather than fear, America's leadership position has only grown stronger. In the 1960s, before my time, I'm happy to say, Wall Street was riding a bull market. But behind the scenes, our market machinery was straining to keep up. Most clearing and settlement transactions involved a costly and physically and cumbersome process. Rising stacks of paper stock certificates had to be physically delivered by clerks, wheeling carts up and down Wall Street and in other financial districts all across America. It was a scene from another century, struggling to meet the demands of the modern securities markets. Indeed, paper-based clearance and settlement systems built for a gentler era began to buckle under the weight of soaring volumes. Delays at one firm held up the work of another. Securities were lost or stolen, fails ballooned, and many thinly capitalized broker-dealers were caught by the whiplash of scuttled transactions. In desperation, trading hours were reduced, and exchanges eventually closed on Wednesdays, believe it or not, to allow firms to process the mountains of certificates. The breakdown over an antiquated system was described by the SEC chairman at the time as, quote, the most prolonged and severe crisis in the securities industry in 40 years. Firms failed. Investor confidence plummeted, unquote. And very much to its credit, the SEC was proactive in remedying this so-called paperwork crisis. The agency helped market participants to develop the Depository Trust and Clearing Corporation, which would transform how securities were held and traded. Instead of shuffling paper certificates from customer to broker, broker to broker, and broker to customer, title to certificates could now be transferred through computerized ledger entries. The certificates themselves were immobilized, stored securely in vaults, as ownership moved electronically, laying the foundation for the modern clearing and settlement system that has continued to this day.
And finally, in addition, the World Bank oversaw the development of this report. So if it's not already clear, the report is a pretty big deal. Now, those are some of the top stories, but there's plenty of other things going on in the Hedera ecosystem, which we'll cover here in a little bit. But first, let's get on to Shark Bites to answer your questions on the Hedera ecosystem and HBAR economy. So, Rob, we've been a little bit async recently. You took some time in your happy place. I was on vacation last week, but we're going to get back into the groove now.
Yeah, absolutely. Back in a cold Sydney, and as some wit online said, not in my hairy place anymore. So, which rings very true. No, I'm back to the grindstone. We've got so much work on with Project Acacia. We're increasing the team. We're delivering like demons. Yeah, I'm glad to be back, but I'm great to be back in sync with you.
There we go. So last week, it seemed like there was some really big stuff coming out. We had a listing on Robinhood, which is huge. We had AR Rahman doing some interesting stuff. We saw a slide up that he was showing to Sam Altman, which I thought was really interesting. We don't know the details around that. But the other thing that came out is something that I haven't seen. We know we've been talking about it a lot as a possibility, but I hadn't seen it actually done in practice. And that was changing of the fees around use of the consensus service. Can you give us some details around that?
Yeah, sure. So some context. Our Treasury Committee, CoinCom, is responsible for constantly reviewing our fee schedule. All the transaction fees on the network, which are published and online. It's a fee calculator, so everyone building on the network knows exactly what their fees will be, and of course they're always super low and predictably low. But over time, it was always anticipated that this might change, and so good governance puts in place the mechanisms to manage that change. And actually, none of the fees on that table, they've been added to over time, but the ones that were with us with open access haven't changed. It became increasingly obvious that the computational and infrastructure cost of running the Hedera consensus service, in fact, this particular one, the consensus submit message, were hugely out of balance. So 1/100th of a cent for effectively an eternal log message was not, in step. So there are quite a lot of work, some, external consultancy. We have amazing economists on the council through the LSE and CoinCom itself, deliberated for quite a long time. It's a big change, and it has consequence and impact to users of the network. So it wasn't done lightly. But CoinCom ultimately, with all of those inputs, decided that a more appropriate and sustainable long-term price for that one message, so the consensus submit message, would be 8/100ths of a US cent rather than one. And that change will be in the release that goes into production in January, I believe. So we have some time to adjust. I think it'll be. It's the right thing to do, and it demonstrates, I think, good governance. We couldn't possibly continue the network with these, the burden, the load of, once we get back into a really high volume scenarios with high HCS, TPS, the network, would be it would be too much of a loss leader. Let's put it that way. So now is the right time to do that. I think it might. From a builder's perspective, it might change the way that we use the consensus service. It's not cheap, effectively free logging forever. One has to then architect in such a way where we use it appropriately. And of course, all of the higher revenue earning transactions are through the token service and the smart contract service. So it would probably, I'm certain, direct more of the traffic that way as well, because the differential is far less. It is what it is. It's been decided, and like I say, that's good governance. It's been decided for the right reasons.
Well, Rob, speaking of good governance, I've always wondered about something on the denominator on how our fees are calculated. Of course, it's paid in HBAR, but it's denominated in the US dollar. But the US dollar is always inflating. We have the CPI. We know how far it's inflating from year to year. Wouldn't it make sense to have that built into the fee schedule? So I'm not saying that changes every year, but every 5 years you kind of leapfrog ahead and assume what the inflation is going to be for the next 5 years, or some kind of mechanism to take that into consideration, because that is going to have to be taken into consideration over time.
Yeah, for sure. And I think that's definitely one thing that is being considered by CoinCom. So, the analysis isn't on a point-by-point basis on particular fees, which, it's what we've just been through. I mean, it is definitely looked at holistically. And yes, currencies inflate and deflate sometimes. So there's a necessity to constantly be on our guard. And with these governance mechanisms in place, we have the ability to do that.
All right, fair enough. So we'll jump into some of these community questions. The first one is around RWAs. Actually, we have a couple around real-world assets. The first one comes from our friend Orbis86, who asks, what's Hedera's strategy to attract real-world asset tokenization at scale beyond just partnerships? This is a great question. I know that's something that's a hot topic on a lot of people's minds. So how's the council looking at that?
So, the question says Hedera. We have obviously different organizations within the ecosystems. The ecosystem partners have different strategies in this. Tokenization and real world asset tokenization is a theme, an agreed theme for this year and beyond. It's the hot topic. We have the asset tokenization studio. So there's product strategy in there, which is being built out increasingly, and it's an amazing resource. If people haven't used it yet, it's definitely a key lever in the toolbox. So that's on the product side. That's come out of Hashgraph, but also in collaboration with Real World Need, introduced through the foundation and business development. So the go-to-market strategically is the foundation's role, and they've with these tools, with these levers, they're able to leverage these relationships and to get to scale. So ecosystem growth is within their remit. This isn't just top end of town stuff. The disruptors and the innovators are able to utilize the tooling. It was built in collaboration with Red Swan. So for for real estate asset tokenization, which is an amazing set of use cases for which it's ideally suited. We've got more smart contract templates being deployed through the asset tokenization studio, more standards like ERC 3643, which is far more institutional grade real world asset tokens and smart contracts. So that's part of that thrust as well, sort of aligning the types of token with the need of institutions. So, privacy protection and the ability to control the movement of these tokens in a familiar and similar way, I guess, to, TradFi. So we've got, and then of course you've got the council, and the council are, very within the use cases that, I'm seeing through UseCom and the enterprise use cases, the governing council use cases, with tokenization as one of our core themes this year. There's a great interest in how this is developing across the space. So, and then through THA, we've got delivery, and they've got their batch of projects that they're delivering within the enterprise and government space as well. And so this, tokenization theme and the asset tokenization studio and the standards that are evolving around this within the Hedera ecosystem are all key pillars of that thrust that we're making. So, yeah, I think the growth is there within the Web3 space. Tokenization. We're hearing it a lot. Everything of value in the world is going to be tokenized. It's something we've been saying for what appears to be a couple of years now, and so everyone else is obviously catching up. Stable coins clearly are a very specific asset type, and they're leading the charge. But there are many other types of asset that are on other chains. It's starting to emerge, and I'm sure will on Hedera as well.
Well, the one that I'm probably most excited about right now on Hedera is the Kenyan Digital Exchange. Of course, the Nairobi Securities Exchange is one of the Hedera Governing Council members, and the Kenyan Digital Exchange, which they're doing in partnership with Valor, and I think they're getting some support from THA as well. It's going to kind of be a sister exchange to their traditional exchange, and it's going to be all digital assets. I think that has tremendous potential. What other ones, or you can talk about that one if you want, or what other ones have you excited around RWAs going forward in the months and years to come?
Of course, I mean, Frank Murti is a good friend. He's a colleague on Newscom, and I'm kind of very keenly interested in the progress of that project, not just from a delivery perspective, but from how they're going about it. NSE, is a model exchange in that part of Africa, and many of the other countries around it in Eastern Africa are looking to how they're delivering this. So I think this has every possibility to spread like wildfire across that continent, which would be an amazing thing to see. And actually, why Frank saw the potential and the benefit in joining the council, I think all of those things are lining up well for NSE. What am I most interested? Well, I mean, we haven't talked about sustainability and carbon credits and biodiversity credits are other examples of real world assets. We're getting, with Vera and the Vera announcement recently out of the Sustainable Impact Fund and the foundation, that has the possibility to be, massive. So I'm very, very interested in how that's progressing. I'm also looking at a few projects who are tokenizing funds. So, ways of fund tokenization through, and there's a couple of smart contract types. There's the ERC 4626 and the ERC 7575, which are both kind of vault style contracts, but very suitable for tokenized funds. And there's a couple of projects I'm aware of that here in Australia, actually, that are implementing those. And that would be very exciting to see as well, because the funds and fund structures bring together lots of other real world asset types, so maybe real estate and stable coins and carbon credits and everything. So really excited to see how that takes us to the next level.
It's an exciting space for sure. And before we leave it, I did get another question from Roy who asks, when will HBAR get its RWA.XYZ listing? And I talked to the Hedera Foundation, and it is a work in progress. They are working on it. The main thing that they're working on now is how to get all of the entities that are going to be minting real world assets on Hedera. How do you get that information to RWA.XYZ in an efficient manner? So once they get that worked out and a few other little kinks, we're going to get our listing, and I'm sure Hedera is going to be one of the leaders in that space, considering all the things we've been talking about here.
Yeah, it's already integrated. You can search for Hedera on RWA XYZ. So those, they've done everything they need to on the platform side, but it's quite a manual process. So the projects have to push their data onto the platform and maintain it there. And so, it's not, extracted from the ledger data, which, one would expect it should be. So, that's what the foundation are doing, working with each of, the projects that are submitting these sorts of tokens to the network. And once we're nowhere to be seen on that platform, and that's where all the Web3 eyeballs are. I suspect once we get everything kind of clicked into gear, then we'll surge into it, because stable coins and real world assets, and we've got all the Arch Act stuff, and it's just, there's so much that could be showcased through that platform.
Sure, no question about that. All right, so the next one comes from Hederian, who asks, can Hedera's governing council members publicly talk about being in the council now? Now, of course, there's no rules against them talking about it, but I'm sure that some of them felt restricted considering the regulatory gray area and the uncertainty that we experienced in the past few years. But a lot of that is starting to clear up. So how would you answer this question?
I mean, the council members are their own entities, and they've each got a different risk posture about how public they're talking about what they're doing. Obviously, a lot of that is commercially sensitive to some of them, especially the use cases that they're looking at or working on. It's fair to say that I think the regulatory posture, the regulatory clarity within the jurisdictions for which they're most interested, and of course the US is key amongst those, has always been maybe a cloud over the head or a constraint on what they're willing to say or go all in on. So, although I don't think it changes anything for the council or the council members specifically, it changes a lot from Hedera's perspective, and I suspect some of the council members will feel more at ease with talking more widely, especially the regulated ones. So, let's hope we see more announcements from the council members themselves.
All right, good to hear. So it sounds like Musa Umar is pretty excited. He says, let's go. Shark Bites with Rob always brings the alpha. Here's one. What key catalysts do you see pushing HBAR to mass enterprise and retail adoption in the next 12 months? Rob, I like this question. I know you're limited sometimes in ways you can talk about the HBAR, but this could be looked at a couple different ways. Number one, being used as just paying fees for the use of the network, and that's just utilization of the network itself. But the other thing is the HBAR economy, actually using the HBAR as a medium of exchange. And with HBAR being unique in the ecosystem, it's a strategic asset, but it also has a different fee structure than other tokens that are built on Hedera. I do think it has a special place when it comes to being used as a medium of exchange. What are your thoughts?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, to Omar's point, I don't think I bring alpha. I bring insight, but I certainly don't bring alpha, deliberately not. But yes, I do agree. I mean, the HBAR, the cryptocurrency of our network, the native currency that is, like you say, has a different fee structure, enables, I mean, that is the utility coin of the Hedera network, and every single application being built on it could and maybe should use it as the token of choice. Now, I understand why we want, we've got the Hedera token service, and we've got a need to build token economies on top of Hedera. So, there are all sorts of reasons for projects issuing their own tokens. It builds community. It creates, need. It creates, the economy for those respective platforms. But there is always an opportunity to include HBAR in that, and transfers of HBAR are still 1/100th of a US cent. That's never going to change, I don't think. So there are always going to be reasons to use HBAR, and that's the thing that will drive the HBAR economy and will be the tide that lifts all the boats.
There's no question that stablecoins and things that are based off of fiat currencies that are already in existence, or gold, or even using other kinds of assets as mediums of exchange makes sense. But with HBAR, as you mentioned, being 1/10 of the cost of transferring compared to those other tokens, it makes sense for the thing that we talk about all the time, and I know we're really passionate about, and that's micropayments. And that can be with AI between different agents, between users and agents. That can be for transactional Internet of Things. We talk about that with Neuron and CLSQ. I just think that that's a great place for HBAR to find a niche. I've had discussions around that, and people get concerned around, what about the volatility of the HBAR compared to the US dollar or other fiat currencies? And I'm like, well, but it's 1/10 of the cost. I mean, that's a huge difference when you're talking about these really high volume use cases, right?
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's purpose made for those sorts of tiny transactional Internet of Things or agentic commerce type applications, or agent to agent commerce rather than agentic commerce. So yes, absolutely. I think it's ideally positioned. The 10x or more difference between that and other types of currency it's a magnitude of scale, obviously.
Exactly, right.
Which, will eat a lot of volatility. So, yeah, it should definitely be considered for such things.
And I like to, shout Hedera from the rooftops, and there's no better way to do that than, the HBAR itself. And it's very practical, like we're talking about here. It's the difference in costs, and it creates a really good narrative for the HBAR. If it can become the transactional Internet of Things or the AI chosen currency for these agents or whatever, I think that's a really powerful narrative to just expose Hedera to the rest of the crypto space.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
So we'll jump into the next one here. It comes from NotJack1234, who asks, could you ask Rob if Oracle has joined the council? Now, Rob, I haven't heard anything about this. And if you do have any information about this, I don't think you could give us any, as you said, alpha on it. But is there anything that Oracle's working on that you can share?
No, Oracle have not joined the council. Okay. And if they were joining the council, then Oracle would be the one to announce it. That's our protocol. Oracle, so there are lots of ties to Oracle. Many of the key people within Hashgraph, the original Hashgraph team around Lionel Chokron, Wes Geisenberger, and many others actually came from Oracle. So I think there are still deep ties between the Hashgraph team and Hedera more generally and Oracle. But no, they're not on the council.
All right, fair enough. So the next one is an old question that we've gotten many times with a different spin. It comes from Troy BR7957, who asks, blockchain for energy, when TPS? Lloyds/Archax, when TPS? The entire governing council, when TPS? Mm-hmm. So we've gotten this over and over again. People want to know when this network is going to start to scale. Of course, we've seen in the past Hedera have tremendous volume with things like Atom.io, but we've been kind of in a lull lately, even though I have seen some more life recently. But what are your thoughts on this question and what we could see as far as that hopeful, expected hockey stick moment we might see in the Hedera ecosystem?
Yeah, I can only say what I always say on this. Well, to start with, when TPS, one TPS is TPS. So I guess the question is saying when large TPS. Many of these institutional use cases are high value, low volume ones. So we were talking about real world asset tokens earlier. Those are not 1,000, 2,000 TPS type use cases. The high volume transactional use cases are the ones, we're talking about micropayments or any other kind of high volume payments use case. That's when you get the volume. So we shouldn't be looking at specific use cases, and if you added all the council together, you'd probably get one or two high volume use cases, and the rest, certainly for the next year or so, would be relatively low volume, but high value. So if the only metric you're looking at is TPS, and I think we've moved beyond that, then we need to look to the range of use cases all delivering and all kind of operating together. So that's everything from maybe the DeFi end of the spectrum to retail use, through Web 2.5 type use cases with those kind of baby steps that corporates and institutions are making, all the way up to maybe high volume payments or supply chain or some of the other more sophisticated use cases. We need that full spectrum of use cases to be delivering and growing together. And we're there, right? I mean, I think we are at the point where we have many projects having delivered, and now they're growing their businesses. And as those businesses grow, so will the TPS grow, and so will the revenue for the network that's associated with it grow. I personally don't think that TPS is the be all and end all. We have total value locked, we have stablecoin issuance, we have the smart contract service and the token service, which have higher revenue consequences of their use. So those are the metrics I think are more important for the sustainability of the network long term. I know that we had the benefit of those months of very high volume, but actually going back to the first question about your question about the HCS price change, that's actually a consequence of some of the learnings that we got from the Atma experience, because it was a very costly endeavor to do high volume HCS, and the product fit just wasn't there. But the cost couldn't be passed on to the customers in a way that they were willing to accept it. So, all of these things do add up to, the changes that we have to make, the course corrections we have to make in the network. But like I said earlier, that's good governance. When high TPS, well, we all want it, and but I want high TPS in the smart contract service too, and in the tokenization service too.
All right, Rob. Well, I do think that revenue is obviously pretty critical for sustainability, and that's really what we're looking for the network, and then everybody can grow together. The next one comes from Alpha 80, who says, ask Rob, is there a test that's happening in August to stress the network? If so, what are they looking for on that test? Now, Rob, maybe because I was out last week, I didn't hear anything about this. Is there some kind of stress test that's coming up that I don't know about?
I'm not aware of one.
Okay.
So... anyone can stress the network at any time. We've got some famous community developers who have tried in the past, and but I'm not aware of anything that's specifically been set up for August.
All right. Fair enough. Well, we'll keep an eye out. Of course, you can stress the network, but it is going to cost you a little bit to do so because, of course, everything costs a little bit of money. Nothing's free. The next one comes, and we have a few on this one, but I think we're going to make this one the last one. It comes from HBAR, who asks, are there any other Web3 or NGO charity potential council members in the pipeline? And does Rob anticipate a future where a node could be operated by a DAO-structured organization?
So NGOs are still on the list of potential council members. We don't have any yet, but they would be onboarded through the same mechanisms as any other potential candidate council member for Hedera. Yeah, and we've had the question about the DAO structure before. I'd see no reason why not. We don't have. We would need to change the requirements for council members to include DAO-based structures, or those might be a kind of a cooperative business entity in old school terms. That could be the case. Of course, they need to be able to own a share in a Delaware company, such as everyone else on the LLC agreement, host the node, contribute to governance. So I think there's probably a few things that would need to be tied off on what that DAO structure actually is and how it can contribute in a meaningful way to the governance of the Hedera network. But I don't imagine that wouldn't be insurmountable if all of that could be done. And of course, we've got other stipulations like Fortune 500 style companies and everything else, which most DAOs don't meet at the moment. But there is a catch-all requirement which adds significant value to the network. Brings use cases, adds great value, and maybe a DAO would tick that box. But I think in the future that may well be the case, but not at the moment.
Well, we have a couple entities that are set up as a DAO structure. Galaxy is one of them. Another one is Karate Combat. They're already kind of set up like that. I know Solo, the CEO of Galaxy, he showed interest in, participating in the council at some point if they can grow to the size where it actually makes sense. So, some of those players that are native to the Hedera ecosystem, that might make some sense. Now, Rob, we do have some questions in the backlog. I'm going to give you a break on some of those, but considering there's been so much going on, and over the past few weeks, as I mentioned, we've been a little bit async. We've been trying to get things together. Is there anything else that you'd like to touch on before we let you go?
No, there's some good, there's some really good hips coming through, which maybe we can talk about next time. We had a few come through TechCom last week, which I'd love to drill down a little on if the community is interested in hearing more. I'm head down on the Project Acacia work with AP Plus and the Reserve Bank of Australia. There's so much going on. We have, all the public announcements are out now. So there are 19 pilot use cases, 5 further proofs of concept, 14 industry participants. ranging from the big banks down to fintechs. So there's a huge amount of engagement. And behind those 14 lead participants, there are maybe 3 or 4 additional players for each one. So that's all consuming at the moment and will be for the next few months. We're working with THA on some of that delivery. We're working with Hashgraph on the HashSphere delivery. We're bringing to bear a lot of the proof of concept work that we've been doing over the last couple of years and that expertise. We're growing our team. So yeah, there's a lot to be very proud of actually at the moment, because there's a culmination of a lot of people doing a lot of work in stealth over quite some time. So I love it when a plan comes together, and that's how it feels right now.
Well, I'm looking forward to having those conversations as some of those entities come out of stealth and we can start to talk about some of these things. Rob, we'll ask the community if you guys want to hear about some of those HIPs. Go ahead and let us know down in the comments. If you have any other questions on the Hedera ecosystem or the HBAR economy, go ahead and drop those down in the comments as well. But Rob, as always, thank you so much for coming on today, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, Brandon. See you next week.
So we do need some more questions for Rob, so drop those down in the comments. Now, moving on, I do want to say that clearly, as I opened with, I'm pretty bullish right now. I'm excited about what's happening in the crypto market, but I also want to touch on what the goals should be for Hedera in a bull market. And luckily, it aligns with what Bullbarians want. Now, it may sound crude, but maximizing HBAR's token price is what we're shooting for as an ecosystem. And no, it's not just to make investors rich, though that is a nice side effect. It's to attract capital into the ecosystem to sustain the network and everything that's being built on top of it. You may think, well, we don't want to boom and bust. Wouldn't it be better to have a nice, slow rise in the HBAR's value? Maybe, but that's just not how these markets work. Prices are sticky with these tokens. A token that goes to $1 billion fully diluted market cap in a bull market will see a 90% pullback in the bear, but so will the one that reaches a $40 billion market cap and a $1 trillion market cap. If an ecosystem has the ability to go through remaining treasury and revenue to sell 2% of the market cap per year until the next bull market, we would rather be the token that starts with a $1 trillion market cap than a $40 billion market cap, to state the obvious. Now, we're assuming the ecosystems don't become ghost chains, and we can see variations in the percentage drops, but the higher you go, the better off you're going to be as far as that capital war chest goes. I would argue that ADA and XRP don't have nearly as much to be excited about compared to Hedera on a fundamental basis, but because they reached such lofty heights in past bull runs and the capital they attracted, things are much more competitive than they really should be. All right, let's take a breather from the crypto markets and jump into some fun stuff. We're going to have a conversation with the inventor of Twigital, which has had some really exciting developments lately. I'm happy to have Jesse Damrow on today. He is the inventor of Twigital, my longtime friend and partner in the Hedera ecosystem. Jesse, welcome.
Hey, Brandon. So great to be with you as always. It's been a while. Good to see you.
It has been a while, but we work in the background a lot, but I haven't had you on the show. It's way overdue. And what we're going to be talking about today is something that's unique, not just in the Hedera ecosystem, but in all of Web3, and something has happened in recent months to actually prove that out. But to start it off, let's just talk about what this platform is. Can you tell us about Twigital?
Absolutely. So Twigital is the first application that creates tokenized digital twins. And of course, what that means is we're making 3D objects by scanning them, and we're documenting these assets at the object level by creating these unique new file types, which are tokenized digital twins. So it's a great tool for documenting assets at the object level.
Well, Jesse, you have been an Bullbarian. You've been in the Hedera ecosystem for pretty much as long as I have. So we're going back into the last decade. What's the journey been like for building this application on Hedera, and where does Twigital stand now?
Yeah, good question. I guess, well, you know me, but I guess the community might not as well, but I'm pretty pragmatic and not so much of the speculator, I suppose, which is, the internet, all things Web3 is wonderful. It's a living, breathing organism. But what we're focused on is a little bit more of the utility aspect. It might not be as interesting to some who are obviously in it for the speculation or the gains, but it's certainly a tool that will be utilized in the future, we think. And we've kind of emulated Hedera's own company trajectory and growth by forming the company, taking time to make sure it's formed properly, taking measures to ensure that since we are building something that's never been built and it's novel, that we should have some IP surrounding it, at least to protect us for some period of time. And so in that way, I think we followed in Lehman and Mansa's footsteps a little bit. Maybe not the sexiest thing, but it's a company that's poised now for serious commercialization and growth.
I think you're absolutely right. Let's dive into these assets that are created with Twigital. As I said, it's unique to have this all within the workflow of a single application. Let's talk about the assets themselves and what they might be used for.
Yeah, good question. So they could be used for so many things, right? I know you always talk about the value transfer mechanism, which is a wonderful end use case. I really like to see it as a great tool for documenting objects. And what happens beyond that could be so many things, right? So from documenting something that maybe a child or your children made that's fragile, that might not have long-lasting ability, this is a way to preserve it. Same for antiques and artifacts and things like that. Condition changes over time. This is a wonderful way to document condition over time. It's also a wonderful way to just document provenance. Who does this thing belong to? Who has it belonged to in the past? Who created it? So we've always viewed Twigital as the single source for issuing, I'll call them receipts, for three-dimensional objects at the asset level. I'm talking about objects that would fit on a tabletop, right? We might want to talk also about limitations, perhaps, but for assets at the object level that fit on a tabletop that are a good candidate for this process, this is a wonderful way to document those for many years to come.
Now, that's one of the things that even though you say on the tabletop, I've Twigitized things that are much bigger than that, but it does make sense. And it covers an awful lot of different objects. Like you were talking about, it could be used for education. It could be used for things that are in a museum to document those kind of things. But I do like that value transfer mechanism, that whole idea of all of these things that we treasure, the things that we might want to sell, trade, maintain some of our value in, things that are on our display shelf in our basement. Whenever we have friends come over and we want to show something off, these are the things that we show off. But now we have the ability with these digitally immersive environments like what we see with Apple Vision Pro, what's happening with Meta, we have infinite reality. There are a lot of these entities that are creating these spaces. So it's not just our display shelf. The assets that are created with Twigital can be shown off around the world with these things. But not only that, but it can be tied to these NFTs that can be traded. But one of the important things is considering a lot of other digital assets, like an NFT, you can trade those back and forth, but there's no physical object behind it. In this instance, there is a physical object behind it. So you have to make sure that the physical object is either stored in a location or can be transferred along with the digital object. And they're pretty much connected at the hip in that way. One of the things that I thought was amazing is when you started talking about having a clearinghouse around these objects. So the objects could go to the clearinghouse, they could stay there. They might actually trade hands several times in that clearinghouse. And then whenever somebody does want to take delivery of it, they can take delivery of it. One of the challenges I think we've had with Twigital is like Web3 in general, like cryptocurrency in general. It's such a new concept that people have a hard time understanding what it could be used for, but there are so many applications. And I think that's a good place to start, that kind of clearinghouse where you can trade these physical objects. What are your thoughts around those lines, getting people to understand the power of these kind of assets?
Yeah, I love that idea. And you're absolutely right. Since we're the only people doing this, I think it's definitely a learning curve, right? We've had to learn a lot. The technology, even in the 3 years we've been building the company, has changed. As you know, we've moved from photogrammetry now to LiDAR, and those are deep sciences in the broad field of sort of object capturing, as I would say, creating three-dimensional digital twins as opposed to taking photographs. This is a field that we certainly are very excited about. And then coupling that with Hedera's distributed ledger, we get this beautiful immutable timestamp and all of these other conditions that can be recorded around the capturing of the object that really tell the story of the object. So it's going to be a wonderful tool for people to use if they're considering things like authenticity, provenance, certifying their object, where it came from, who the owner was. There will be no better way to do that, I believe, than creating a forensically analyzable 3D digital twin, but then also tokenizing that. And so we've built that all into the workflow of one application. And yeah, you're right. At this point, it's been a grind because there is nothing else like that. In Web3, you have to imagine a lot of the things that get built, even on Hedera, are things that are already built on another blockchain, and now they're here. So not casting shade at all, but this is kind of like most things, right? And most projects you see, whether it's DeFi or NFTs, CryptoPunks, whatever, there's sort of a version of that already on all the other blockchains. Now they're building another one for Hedera. We wanted to do something completely different, something that does not exist, right? What can we do with Hedera that could not be done on these other blockchains? So Hedera has this wonderful thing called HTS, Hedera Token Service, which is a beautiful tool that we've leveraged, and I don't think anyone else, at least that we're aware of in the Web3 space, offers such a seamless, easy to use, low cost service such as HTS that allows us to make these incredible files. So in that way, we're just so thrilled that Hedera exists and that it's all been working as we have imagined, more or less, over some iterations over the last 2 years or so. But at this point, the proof of concept has been tested. It will work wonderfully. There are limitations, of course, but since we're the only one out there, we shouldn't be too hard on ourselves.
Speaking of, the uniqueness of this, we took a big step over the past few months, and it's a step that I haven't seen in the Hedera space since Hedera itself in the very beginning. Do you want to explain what happened as far as IP and Twigital over the past few months?
Yeah, so I mentioned that we've kind of emulated Hedera as the company itself and just being pragmatic and not speculative, even though we're operating within the Web3 space. So we do view it as a utility. Ultimately, we will need to generate revenue, of course, and there is a whole nother side to it, but we're really focused on how does it work and how do we build the company. So I think right now it's a wonderful spot because we've proved out the concept and we're just getting ready to maybe take that next step towards additional investment and looking at serious commercialization. The IP aspect of it, I fully realize and respect that this is kind of a polarizing topic within specifically Web3, but just computer, science in general. Utility patents on software can either be viewed, people have differing opinions. However, taking that blueprint from Lehman and Mance, we feel it's very important when you're creating something very new that others might try to emulate or that could be commercially valuable, that's a step that you should take responsibly if you're building a business. So to get a utility patent, a software patent, generally would take you at least 3 years or something. We have zoomed right through that, and in 2.5 years, I am so proud to announce, and kudos to you as well for just sticking with it. On June 10th, just last month, we were issued a United States utility patent titled Object Digitization Utilizing Tokens, and we're just very excited about that, and we're thrilled to begin to continue to build the company and raise further investments so that we can commercialize this product.
Well, congratulations to you. So the next thing I want to ask, we've talked about a lot of different entities here. We've talked about Apple Vision Pro. We've talked about eBay. There's a lot of different things that could go in here. Who are some of the entities out there that you would think of as your dream partnerships?
Yeah. Oh, this is the question, right? So this is where we're at. This is where Twigital's at. We've been toiling in the weeds, trying to make this thing work, trying to make it user-friendly, making sure that all the aspects work and that all the IP is there, and really building the company. Now, this is the fun part, right? So I think so much, you mentioned a few of them. They just had Fanatics Fest in New York a few weeks ago. I think about something like that with all of the cards and collectibles and sports mementos and all of these types of things. Big names like Tom Brady. Tom Brady is right now opening, to your point about the clearinghouse, what he calls vaults. There's vault services with PSA and eBay, and this is where people will essentially house their items. Usually it's sports cards, comic books, things like that. And these are vaults as a service where the cards will be authenticated. They will be graded. They will be certified and stored and then can be traded as well. So that is a business case that is exploding and that Twigital is very much poised to be a part of, I hope.
All right, exciting stuff. Now, right now, I think people who want to get involved and try Twigital out, you can just download it on iOS. You can try it out for yourself, take a few objects. It does take a little bit of a learning curve, but once you've built that skill, you have that skill forever. We also have something else called Twigital Labs, where you can use AI to create these universal scene description files, these 3D files of pretty much anything you can dream up. I'll put one up that I did just this morning of an Barbarian, and I did another one. Shout out to Rebecca Karate Mommy. She asked me to make one for her, and I minted these on Twigital Labs. I sent it to myself, and then I minted these on Twigital, so then you get the NFT itself. But Jesse, what are some of the next steps in your vision for Twigital?
Well, that's a great point. So now that the IP, the proof of concept, and all of that has been built out, and I think it's really about commercialization, right? So we have this whole AI thing, which I love. I mean, I understand Hedera and AI is really a push along with RWAs right now. I think Twigital is very well positioned. To your point, and I'm not sure many people know about Twigital Labs yet. They might be familiar with the iOS application, but essentially Twigital Labs will let you create any three-dimensional object by prompt, refine those, add rendering to those. And then, of course, you end up with what could be a novel character or something that you want to document the creation of, right? Hey, I created this character at this date. This is my brainchild. And so it's a beautiful way to do that. I think that could be a powerful tool in itself, just to create anything, not only documenting physical objects that exist, but creating three-dimensional objects and tokenizing them in this way could also be a part of the app very soon. But as far as next steps, it's really about reaching out now and finding these partnerships and raising additional capital. This is always very important. We need to raise enough investment so that we can take a serious shot at having an operating fund for at least a year or two so that we can make a serious go at this. And to do that, the funding that we've raised to date has been wonderful, but it's somewhat limited within the ecosystem of Hedera. And I think we need to move beyond that now and see if we put some capital behind the project, what would be possible.
So if you know anybody that might be a good partner for us, that could be a business, somebody that could leverage this kind of stuff, we certainly want to hear from you. Jesse, it's been a great journey to this point. We've created something that I'm really proud of. Thank you for everything you've done to this point, and thanks for coming on today and giving us an update.
Oh, thank you, Brandon. As always, it's a pleasure to be with you and to have worked with you over the years, and looking forward to more.
Now let's take a look at a big INO that's taking place this weekend with Top Flight Football. Top Flight is bringing karate combat style up-only gaming to Premier League football in the UK, or soccer for people over here in the US. I do think that using up-only gaming for established leagues is brilliant, and you really don't get more established than the Premier League. In the INO, there's going to be 3 tiers of NFTs: gold for $300, silver for $150, and bronze for $75. The gold version will go on sale at noon Eastern US on Saturday for those with a whitelist NFT, and an hour later at 1 p.m. for everybody else. If you do want one of those whitelist spots, be one of the first to reply down in the comments, and I have a few to give away. The silver tier will be at the same time on Sunday and bronze on Monday. 15% of the 10 billion total football tokens will go to the NFT holders, 2 million per gold NFT, 750,000 per silver, and 450,000 per bronze. Plus, you'll get a 300,000 football token bonus if you get all 3 gold, silver, and bronze. Half of these tokens are going to be available on Centex and the other half over on Kabila. So the Top Flight team thinks that up-only gaming is going to be able to start in Q3 or Q4, and that depends on when the Up Layer 2 is launched by Karate Combat, but we're hoping for that before too long. But speaking of Kabila, they're doing a version 3 rebrand. Not sure what's going to be included quite yet, but they seem pretty excited about it. Next, we have another NFT project that's live on Kabila, my very own Bullbarians. Over 100 of the 225 are already sold. There are 3 ultra rare in this batch, and only 1 is sold, the King. The Queen and the Glitch are still available, and they all give you access to the HBAR Bull world powered by Galaxy, with early access to my content and plenty of other perks. We also have the $1 Million African Hackathon kicking off, the largest in Hedera history. One thing I learned is participants all need to complete a Hedera developers course. It only takes about 12 hours, and it's not a bad idea for anybody that's in the space. You can take a look down in the description for a link to participate. Finally, Cask Capital listed the HBAR branded wine. The red starts at $45 and white at $55, and this is some really good wine. Those prices are already a discount to what you would pay for retail, and if you buy a case of 3, 6, or 12, the discounts only get bigger. They also introduce cases that are half red and half white, so you can get a pair, you can get 6 or 12. There's only about 600 bottles of red and 600 bottles of white in this batch, and they'll be available to ship to most places in the world in just a few weeks. And with that, let's jump into some network analysis. I really don't understand it, but every time I go on Hashpoint, the transaction volume is cruising at a few dozen, but the average stays down around 10 TPS. The network revenue is running at about $2,800 per day. Hourly active accounts is averaging between 400 and 600, and we created about 45,000 accounts this past week. Moving over to the HBAR and crypto markets, Bitcoin is down 3.3% in the past 24 hours and 2.3% over the past week to just under $114,000. HBAR is down 4.5% on the day and 1.5% on the week to just under 25 cents. Despite this dip, HBAR has held on to the gains from 3 weeks ago and appears to be making a series of higher lows, which is certainly good from a technical standpoint. If we head back north, I would want to see us break through 30 cents before we got too excited, and we don't want to go too much below 23.5 cents if this higher low scenario is to hold. Looking forward to next week, we're going to get Brady back for another HBAR DeFi Corner. We're getting some good feedback on that. That's going to be on Sunday, so tune back in for that. We're also going to get Cask Capital as well as Christopher Creek. Christopher Creek is the winery that's behind that HBAR branded wine. We're going to have some really good discussions with them. And of course, we really love what Jeremy is doing over at Cask Capital. I'm also going to get the team behind that $1 Million African Hackathon on as well. I want to make sure we get our questions on the Hedera ecosystem and the HBAR economy for Rob, because we might be doing that one a little bit early for next week, so go ahead and drop those down in the comments. Next week's show is probably going to be on Wednesday because I'm going to a major crypto conference called Rare Evo that is going to be in Las Vegas at Caesar's Palace. So if you guys are going to be out there, or even if you're just in the area, make sure you let me know you're going to be out there. Maybe we can meet up at the event or someplace around the event. That's all we have for this week. We'll see you next time.